Hi, Jay. Welcome to this course on Romans. Great to have you. And I wanted to get started here in week one with a reply video to what you've written in both of the response forums. What you've written is great. You're off to a great start. And sending you this reply video gives me the chance to say hello to you as you're there in Seoul, and also to give you a little bit of reaction to what you've written here in these two response forums. So, in the first forum, I think what I want to underscore is your recognizing the assumed continuity for Paul between what we call Old Testament, what he would have just called the law and the prophets, probably, or scripture, and his own gospel, which he is presenting in Romans. So at every point for Paul, the scriptures of the past of Israel, the words of the law and the prophets are alive, they are relevant, they are authoritative. At no point does Paul regard these words as something that could be obsolete or replaced by something about his gospel or Jesus or something like that. This is important because many times we will forget this when we begin to read what Paul says about the law of Moses. People will jump to the conclusions that when Paul is pointing out certain vulnerabilities or limits in the law of Moses, that he means to say that the gospel has replaced the law of Moses or something like that, that the law of Moses is no longer authoritative or current or alive. And this is just not true to how Paul himself invokes the law of Moses as well as prophets like Habakkuk. So I was just glad that you mentioned that. I think that what I see in your response as on the right track in terms of the interpretation of Habakkuk is the righteousness of God or the justice of God as the living action of God, the transformative presence of God in the history of the people of God and the rest of the world. That is what Habakkuk is longing for. That is what the word of the Lord urges him to be patient in awaiting. And it is what the just person, as Habakkuk hears from the Lord, is um, faithfully awaiting as the way in which they will live. The just by faith will live. This means that I think the justice of God or the righteousness of God is hard to interpret as a status of human beings. It seems to me to be clear that it is the activity, the action of God rather than some kind of legal status. And here we see it's important how it is the ground, the justice of God. We can also call this the faith of God or the faithfulness of God is the ground of the faith of God's covenant partner uh, among the human. So the just by faith will live. This is the faith, I think, of the just person, but it is itself an expression of the faith of God because the faith of the human depends on the trustworthiness of God, the faithfulness of God. And so when Paul talks about the justice of God being revealed from faith to faith, my understanding of that is that it is revealed from the faith of God as that faith inspires the faith of the human, the trustworthiness of God as it inspires the trust of the human. And of course, this dynamic of the faith of God and the faith of the human is disclosed in its fullness in the person of the Messiah, in whom the faith of God and the faith of the human are one person. And that life of faith of Jesus is what is being shared, according to Romans, by the Spirit in a way that affects how people treat one another, how they welcome one another in the same way that God has welcomed them. So, great work there in Forum 1, and those are the things I wanted to highlight about it. I appreciate also what you have said here in Forum 2 about the reading by Jakob Taubes and the insight that that's giving you into the political edge or force of Paul's teaching. I think this is crucial for us to appreciate. It's somewhat unusual for Christians to hear this political edge in Romans, but I think that is partly because Christian readings of Romans had lost touch with the law and the prophets of the Jewish community, because the Jewish hope for salvation, for deliverance on the earth, always involves political freedom, political quality of life on the earth, the ability to enjoy one another, the freedom to worship God and serve God in the way that the people of God treat one another and relate to their other neighbors. That's sort of where salvation happens, how salvation happens, what the Messiah is about. And so I think it is intuitive for that sort of Jewish hope to then describe the gospel, as Paul does, as a political reality. Now, we're going to get deeper into how the gospel is political. It is not simply a matter of toppling immediately a corrupt government in Rome, but it is about, I think, undermining that corrupt government. It is about embodying the rule of Jesus as Lord rather than the Roman emperor. And this means the theater of the Christian community's political life is especially how they treat each other, how they share the table, how they share their goods with each other, how they share their time with each other. This is where and how the gospel is politically powerful. Will this also produce certain kinds of public protest against a corrupt government? I think it will in some cases. Will it involve, in contexts like ours, a certain participation in electoral politics or seeking better legislation for the good of the community that we share our life with? I think it usually will. But it's important, I think, to realize that for Paul, the primary sort of locus of the political power of the Christian life is in the commonplace ways that they treat one another and their other neighbors. So we'll get more into that, obviously, as we read more of Taubes as well. Hope this is helpful to you. Please feel free to reply with any further questions or comments. No obligation to reply, but at least let me know if you don't mind that you've seen this video by writing received in the reply. And welcome again to the course. Great to get the conversation started, and looking forward to more conversation with you throughout the summer. I did send you an email a little bit earlier today that invites you to a live Zoom discussion at the end of week 2. So I hope you'll be able to take advantage of that, and that the time that I've offered will work for you. Great to have you in the course again, Jay, and looking forward to getting to know you.